Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast, where we explore your hidden thoughts and desires, revealing your greatest drop the mic moments. Now, here's your host, Art Costello.
Welcome to the Shower Epiphanies podcast. Today, I am honored and thrilled to have Cara Martinisi on our show. Cara is a wife and the mother of 3 boys. Her oldest son lives in heaven. She is the founder of the nonprofit organization Love from Heaven. She is also the contributor to The Mighty, the Peace Journal, and the selfsufficientkids.com website. Cara writes an inspirational blog about her journey through grief, offering the melancholy side as well as the post-traumatic growth found in the aftermath. Cara shares her unique outlook on child loss at www.christianredballoon.com. Cara, welcome to the show. Can you tell us your story and how everything evolved?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on this show. About 4.5 years ago, it will be 5 on August 28th. It was July 3rd, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and I was outside in the pool with my children, and we had only lived in our house for about 8 months. We had just moved there. My boys at that time were 6, 3, and 1. We spent the whole day in the pool. And as the afternoon started to unroll, the clouds started to come in and it got gray and dark. And I said to my boys, come on, let's get out. You know, we heard thunder and that was it. We got out of the pool. We did not want to obviously chance anything being in the water. So we went into our home. We went through our normal routine. It started to rain, a little bit more thunder, and we had our dinner. My husband came home. We ate dinner. My husband and I put our 3 children to bed. And right after I came down from putting my youngest, Nikki, to bed, he was 1 at the time, I heard a sound, and it was a deafening, loud boom. I was unsure what it was. My husband came down and he said to me, is something burning? I looked in the toaster oven. We had a piece of toast in the toaster oven. And lo and behold, we quickly realized it was not the toaster oven, but rather that our home had been struck by lightning. It ignited a fire in our master bathroom. He is a volunteer firefighter. He ran upstairs and you could see the flames coming out of our bathroom. So immediately I grabbed the 3 boys who at this time had just fallen asleep. I grabbed them, I scooped them up. It was now pouring outside and I ran across the street to my neighbor's home, and they obviously let us in. And in the meantime, the fire was raging in our home. And although the fire had not grown terribly large, we obviously called 911. The amount of water that was needed to put out the fire just totally destroyed our home, the interior of our home. So we knew we had to rebuild our home. And that was, as I said, July 3rd. And we spent the whole summer really saying, thank goodness we're all together. Everything can be fixed. Even recall on July 4th, our town, I live in a small town and they do a 4th of July celebration. Someone saying to me, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're here at the parade. If that had happened to me, I would be so overwhelmed. And I said, if anything had happened to any one of the 5 of us, I would not be here. But everything can be replaced. My children are here. My husband is here. We're safe. So fast forward about a month and needed a place to live now. And we found a house in the school district where my children were going to school. My oldest was attending 1st grade. And that was my biggest priority, that he got to go to the same school. So we moved to the house. We moved into the house, lived in there about 3 weeks. And on a Thursday evening, and it was exactly 8 weeks almost to the time, my children and I had come home, my 3 boys, and I let out Anthony and Christian, my 6-year-old and my 3-year-old at the time. And Christian was taking up the garbage can. Anthony was taking the mail, and I followed behind slowly in the car. And as they got to the top, they went into the garage. They left the garbage can outside. They went into the garage, and I started to get out of the car to get Nicky out of his car seat. He was 1. And I heard a deafening scream. And I turned around to find a concrete supporting pole lying on the ground next to my son, Christian. And my son, Anthony, was the farthest away from me. He was closest to the door to get into the home. Christian was on the ground, not moving, clearly in a very bad way. And at that moment, I can remember, I knew at that moment, my life was forever changed in a second. And I just remember screaming and calling 911, but being so frazzled, obviously, and I'm shocked. It was traumatic, obviously.
Obviously. I mean, it's unfathomable to most people, I would think.
Yeah.
It's okay, Cara.
Yeah. It's, you live with it day to day and you find a way to carry that with you. And he's with me constantly, but it never goes away. Anyone who's experiences grief knows that.
The need to have closure in any given situation is sheer human nature. And when it comes to romantic relationships, this desire skyrockets. Has your previously failed relationship left you in immense pain? It's not uncommon for people to shy away from a new relationship after their first one fails miserably. The fear of the unknown makes them hide in a shell to prevent any future heartbreak. Relatable? Despite wanting to love and be loved, you can't take the plunge if your mind and heart are still locked somewhere in the past. Maybe you aren't aware of the power of releasing the past, or perhaps you don't know how to do it. Art Costello in his online course teaches the art of moving on from bad places to happier, more stable ones. This course can change your life for good, helping you beat all kinds of negativity on the road to eternal bliss. Sign up now before the gloominess gets the better of you at expectationacademy.com.
Yeah, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm a former Marine, and I experienced that there. But it's nothing is like losing somebody that you love. And I can't imagine a child. I lost my wife to ovarian cancer in 2006, and we were married for 35 years. And
so sorry.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss too. I look at the blessings from it. Because I got 35 years, actually 38 years, because we dated for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And she left me with so many gifts and so many things. And my first thought is when you lose a child, you bore that child, you carried them for the 9 months and all those things. And it's just unfathomable. It's kind of in my forefront of my mind this week. In Austin, outside of Austin, Dripping Springs, the little town where I live, have my ranch, we had flooding this weekend, and one of my friends lost her 55-year-old son in the flood. And he has been across that water crossing literally thousands of times and never had it happen. But we never know what's coming.
Never know. My grandmother, who was Christian's great-grandmother, just turned 103. We just celebrated her 103rd birthday. And just a mere few days before he passed, he said to my mom, Grams, I think Grandma Tisi will be the first one to die. She's the oldest. And my mom said, you never know. And
yeah, you just
never know.
And there's no way to prepare for it. And the other part of it is you can what if it to death. What if I had pulled in a second? What if I had turned right? What if I had turned left? 1 second later, 10 seconds later, I think that what it does is it just gives you a greater sense of there's things that we can control and there's things that we can't. Some things are in God's hand. And I wanted to read something to you, and I hope I wrote it down somewhere. I did. I'll find it. And I hope this gives you some comfort. I just read this the other day. It's by Mark Batterson, but it's actually Mark Batterson printed it. It comes out of the Bible. But it says, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the call.
Mm. Yes.
And Christian, God qualified him.
Yeah.
And he's sitting at his way with Vicky, my late wife, and she's taking care of him. So he's in good hands.
Absolutely. And a lot of times after you lose someone, you hear all of the wonderful things. Some of them you didn't even know about. And that's what happened with Christian. And the music teacher would tell me that when children were having a bad day, they would somehow gravitate towards Christian. They would sit next to him, and he was the one to help them and make them feel better. And he was kind. And those are the things that you're grateful for and that I try, and I'm sure you try to keep that spirit alive, keep that part of them alive.
The thing that I've always understood and tried to make sense of it, and, I think that there is a vast difference in preparing for death when someone has cancer and then losing somebody to accident. It's so sudden where everybody says, oh, when you have cancer, you can prepare, you can say the goodbyes and all of those things. And that is stolen from you in a way. And I think that makes the whole grieving process more challenging. I don't want to say difficult, but more challenging.
Yeah, I think that it's different. It's a different kind of grieving process than if someone is sick and their life is coming to an end. One of the things I struggle with is I never actually said the words to him again, Christian, I love you. I was so, traumatized and in shock. And again, I could go back and do, well, what if I did? Or what if I didn't? It doesn't matter. He knew I loved him, and I have to live in that idea.
I agree. I think that is something that people can learn from. You have the ability to teach other people. So
absolutely.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the grieving process because it is a process. For me, I was not very nice in grieving. When I lost my wife, we had the service. Everything was very quick because her twin sister and sister had come from New Jersey and Oregon, and they had already been here a week in the process. So when she left, my grieving, everybody just left and left me alone. And I didn't need to be alone. And I started drinking and not being a very nice man, which was very out of character for me and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until 3 years later when my kids came over and slapped me across the side of the head and said, hey, Dad, you promised Mom you weren't going to do this, that I actually had another revelation and started completely going back to who I was and creating and all that. So how was it for you? I mean, did you experience when after the service that people just left you alone and you almost felt like you were being avoided?
We were so and are so blessed. When it happened, we went and we moved in with my parents. I could not go back to the rental home. Our home was gutted and my in-laws both live 5 minutes away. My parents have a little bit more space. So we went and we lived there. My sister, who lives in Florida, and my niece, who brings light into any situation, actually lived there with us for a few months. My niece at the time was 1. She's the same age as Nikki. We were surrounded by a community that just constantly checked in on us and was around us. I didn't have that experience that I think it's a very common experience that after everything, you feel like, okay, it's over. And I think for me, part of starting the foundation, Love from Heaven, is it stems a lot from the support that we got. I know how much that meant to me and my family. We had a meal train. He died at the end of August. We had meals through the new year. They fundraised, the community fundraised and built a playground in a year. They raised a lot of money and built a playground in his memory. His preschool built a memorial. It really went beyond that for me. It was the everyday people checking in, the texts, hey, how are you doing today? The calls. I used to joke, if we need something up here, we just need to call anybody in our town and they'll be, we'll get it in 5 minutes, because people stuck by our sides. And really still to this day, I feel that support. The first holiday season, obviously, is just devastating. And we had at that time a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. And, you can't cancel your holiday season because you are dying inside. And our community shopped for us. Our community made gifts for myself and my husband, even the adults. An amazing friend of mine now, knew her then, but she's become a very close friend now, organized a project. She and another amazing friend who was there from day one organized a project where each family in the school district created a handprint snowman ornament. And it's one of the most beautiful things because we put it on our tree and we see that's the love that lives on. And that's on Mother's Day. They made a beautiful project for us. Father's Day, it was a birdhouse and packets of seeds and a message from each family and friend. So we are really grateful for the amount of support we had and have. And it's just an outpouring.
That's a great sense of community to have that and to share that. I wonder if it's different when, and this is something for everybody to think about, is maybe it's when we get older, people think we can handle it better. And when we've lived a full life and a child, because everybody, when a child passes, it affects you. It cannot. It just can't. But when we're used to older people dying, and when we're used to car accidents, all the different things that happen, but the grieving isn't any different for them than it is for anyone else.
Now, when Christian passed away, a lot of my family lives close. Some of them have moved to Florida, but my cousin, who was 10 years older than me, and I just adored my whole life. When she was little, I used to follow her. She came to the house and she was around the family and she seemed fine to me. And then she did not attend the funeral. And it was very odd, but come to find out she was sick. And she had cancer. And Christian passed away on August 28th. On October 28th, she passed away. And she was 45 at the time. And the difference in the support, that you do get when it's a child and they're young, and the support that you get when a grown child passes away is not the same. And yet, no matter what age a child passes away, there's someone's child. There's parents that are somewhere living beyond their child and living with it daily. So it is something to examine and for people to really be a little bit more conscious of, I think.
Was Christian's death harder on you or your husband?
Oh gosh, I think it was hard on both of us the same amount. I think we still grieve, so vastly different. And that's a big part of something that we've learned is that we have to respect each other's way of grieving and also try to help each other through it. But that's a challenge.
I'm glad that you said that because people have to understand that we all grieve differently. It is a different process for each one of us. Did he look on you for leadership?
No, I think we're both kind of just put our heads down and we're in such shock. And I, being a female, I think it comes easier to females in general to just talk through things. And I would talk to anyone and everyone who would listen about Christian. And he has friends that he could talk to. But I think in that situation, as time went on, it kind of got a little bit harder. When it first happened, anyone and everyone would listen. And I do believe they still would and will, but I think it becomes a little bit harder. And I do feel that he felt that he needed to be strong. And it's easier for the female to kind of break down. And he didn't have that. He didn't allow that for himself. But he's learned a lot. I think he's learned a lot. And I'm so proud of him for how he has really, I don't want to say come through, but how he has worked through his grief at this point. And he's working through his grief at this point.
The experts say that it usually takes 5 years to get over grieving. I don't know that it's true because I don't know. It's been, for me, we're going on year 13. There's some things that just trigger and I just bawl my eyes out. And then there's other things that just bring me pride, when I hear it. So you go through all these emotions. But I think the biggest thing about grieving is what we learn from it. When we go through these tragic events and just events, I think that God places them before us as learning tools. We're supposed to learn something from them and move on and honor. I've learned to honor. And what I've been blessed with is I'm remarried now, and my wife is such a blessing. My kids love her. My grandkids love her. She had never been married.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was 63 and she was 53. So I married a younger woman, but she never has had children, had never been married. And she has taken on my kids as her own. She cares about them. I mean, what a blessing. And I know Vicky would be honored to have Beverly as her replacement.
Right.
Beverly always tells people he came well trained when he came to me. So, and I always felt honored that she married me. She had lots of opportunity to marry doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs or whatever, but she didn't. So, but did you, getting back to grieving and stuff, did you ever feel like you were victimized by Christian's death?
No, I don't think I ever did. I don't think I ever had that experience.
Yeah, I think some people what if it to death, and it creates that woe is me kind of thing. And I can understand it.
I think earlier on, I may have felt that. How did this happen to me? But honestly, unfortunately, when you look at the statistics, child loss is unfortunately not as small as I thought it was. And I spent a long time angry at God. I was always a Catholic, Roman Catholic, and that's how I was raised. After it happened, in that sense, I felt victimized. I think more by God than anything, because one of the prayers we had said every night with Christian was, please keep our family safe, healthy, and happy. So how did this happen? And I was angry, and I still have anger. It's lessened a lot. And despite being angry with God, I knew that I wanted my children to make their sacraments in the Catholic Church. It was just something I felt. And my middle son, Anthony, just this past Sunday, made his first Holy Communion. So it was honestly through his learning about the church and religion, and I think God's love. I'm not so sure I agree with everything in the Catholic Church, but one thing I know is that he loves us, and God is with us, and Christian is with us. And those are the things that have helped me to come through. And even in church on Sunday and having the ceremony for Anthony's first Holy Communion, it was that very, very heart-wrenching feeling of, oh my gosh, Christian never made his first communion. How could that be? And in that sense, I do think, why did it happen to my family? Why then 2 months later did I lose my cousin? A beautiful ray of light. Why? 2 deaths within 2 months. But over time, I think you start to realize those don't really bring you anywhere. The why or the what ifs, it doesn't bring you anywhere except for more anxiety.
Has anyone ever inspired you to discover a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled you? It is a magical experience, isn't it? Inspiration is indeed very powerful, yet it's often undermined. It can lift you from the ground to the sky in no time. Have you ever thought about returning the favor by inspiring the people around you? If you don't think you have it in you, we have good news for you. Art Costello's online course has everything you need to learn to supercharge yourself and shape your character into a powerful personality. Get ready to discover your strengths and unleash the creativity within. Don't believe it? Check it out yourself by signing up for this life-changing course at expectationacademy.com. That's expectationacademy.com.
One of the things I think that being in Vietnam taught me is that there's some things that are explainable and there are some things that are not. Because I couldn't ever understand why I could walk over a piece of ground and be fine, and somebody behind me would walk over it. Maybe 10 guys would walk over it, they'd be fine, and then the 11th guy would step on something and get blown up. We never knew. And I don't know that and I was raised Catholic also, I don't know that it can be explained out of faith. I really don't. And I don't think that religion in general explains it very well either, or has an explanation for it. I mean, we could talk about free will and all those different things that we have, but it still comes down to it just happens and we have no control over it. And it's always how we come out of it. And I guess that's why, for me, I've always looked at everything as a learning experience, that God is always trying to teach us lessons to make us better down the road and to have an impact on people.
Yes.
And I always think about, I might just say one thing that makes sense with somebody that opens up the whole new world to them and a whole new way of thinking or processing something, or even heals them to get through something that they've been challenged with. And I think that's what's meant to be for us. But with that being said, I do want to say something. Your website is probably one of the most informational, beautiful testaments, intellect to your creativeness and everything. It's just, I've read it and I keep going through it. And there is so much wisdom in it, folks, that I'm going to really encourage it. We're going to include it in the show notes and all that. But I'm saying that in the middle of the show, you guys really need to go to Cara's website, and it will really enlighten you and educate you to a beautiful world that she has brought to us. And I'm grateful for it. So
thank you so much.
And one of the things on the website I want to ask you about is that you talk about dreams.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh my goodness. I've always been a dreamer. In fact, when I was younger, I used to have the recurring dream that my house would burn down. So I just will dream and it feels so real. And I mean, since Christian has passed away, they've only gotten more intense, more frequent, more. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll say, oh, I think I'm becoming psychic. I think have a little bit of this spiritual knowledge is being brought to me through my dreams.
Intuitive.
Yeah, intuitive. That's what it is. Thank you. Intuitive knowledge. And it's just a beautiful thing. My dreams sometimes are great and sometimes they haunt me. And I find with my middle son also, he'll tell me he dreams a lot. And he has connected with Christian that way. You know, he'll say to me, Mom, last night Christian and I were playing soccer, or I dreamt about Christian doing something. And I believe that that's Christian. I know that that's Christian. I know when I have these dreams that they are coming to visit me. For a while, right after Christian passed away, maybe about 6 months after my cousin Tanya passed away, she would come to me in dreams and she would just be there. Not that she said anything, she would just be there. And she had told me before she passed away, I will watch over Christian. I will be with him. I will take care of him for you.
Oh.
So I do know. I put a lot of stock in dreams. Yes. Yeah.
You know, I cannot remember my dreams. I know I dream. I just cannot. I wake up in the morning and my wife will say to me, boy, I had an amazing dream last night. And she can go into detail about everything in it. And I'm standing there going, I can't even tell you what I dreamed about. I have no clue. I wonder what that's about.
My husband is the same way. He cannot remember his dreams.
Maybe it's a male thing.
Yeah, it might be.
Now I won't lose any sleep over how I dream. In our talking, you know, I wanted to ask you this question earlier, and then I got sidetracked in my brain. The other children, your 2 sons, right?
Yes.
Your 2 sons. How did they handle it all?
Well, Anthony was 3 when it happened, and he unfortunately witnessed it all. And he has had survivor guilt. When it first happened, neither of them knew what, they didn't understand any of it. He was almost 4 and Nikki was almost 2 at the time. And they didn't understand. I remember my husband and I saying, okay, we're going to tell him now. We're going to sit him down, Anthony, and we're going to tell him that his brother has passed away and that he won't be coming back, and thinking he's going to have this reaction. And he just took it very matter of fact and walked away. And we kind of looked at each other. But now we know that that's he didn't understand at the time. Mm-hmm. So as time has gone on, and he has been in therapy pretty much since it happened, as time has gone on and he's talked about it in school, he's very matter of factly spoken about it. Yep. My brother Christian is in heaven. And we talk a lot about signs from Christian, and he finds them constantly and he connects to that. And as he gets older and his awareness and his understanding evolves and he matures, it changes. Sometimes we have to revisit it, and we're always working on it. And it's not always in the forefront of what's going on, but it does come up sometimes in the forefront. He's pretty much, I think, and his therapist thinks, and from teacher input and everything, that he is well adjusted, and we've always had the open doors of communication. I think that's one of the biggest things. We've never ever shut down a conversation. We've never tried to, not talk about Christian or talk about Christian. We take cues from them. So if we're talking about Christian and they're like, clearly their body language and their, is showing that they're not interested and they're changing the subject, then we stop. We don't force it on them. And as far as Nicky goes, he, for a long time, probably around 4 or 5, he started to say, well, I didn't live at the same time that Christian did. He never realized that they were alive at the same time. He learned all his stories. He learns all his stories through us, through pictures. Uh-huh. And again, he definitely has some anxieties that we're working on. I like to believe, and sometimes I definitely have the fear of what's to come later in life, but I like to believe that they are both well adjusted for everything that they've been through. And we just continue to keep that door of communication open and keep reading their cues, because that's all we can do.
Yeah, it's true. What role, you mentioned therapy, and it's one thing that I want, my audience to know is that it is always a good idea, and there is nothing wrong with going to ask for help from people that can be there to help you. And it not necessarily can be a therapist. It can be life coaches. It can be your friend. It can be your parent. It can be anything, but specifically when you chose to go to a therapist, did you find it extremely helpful? Did it help you get through things?
Yes. In the very beginning, my husband and I started with a therapist that we liked, and she was great, and she is great. And then for whatever reasons, we did not see her anymore. And I found a trauma therapist for myself, and he has changed my life. The work that I've done with him has changed my life. We do something called CRM, which is a little bit different than the EMDR trauma therapy, but it's a little bit softer and it has a lot of resources, and we work on our spirit animal. We work on our earth breaths and all those sorts of things, which just helped me immensely. And we've gone back to the root of the trauma. We've done a lot of work with that. And then something that shocked me was when you go through a trauma like this or a life-changing experience, you no longer have the reserves to deal with the little things that you used to, maybe you could handle, So I'm insecure. I've been insecure all my life. So I used to be able to live through that day to day. Well, now when I don't have those reserves because all of my energy is going towards grieving, I need to get to the root of this, and I need to work on this and really work through it. So that has helped me immensely. My children, same thing. It just gives them an outlet, a safe place, a place where my middle child tends to be a people pleaser. So therapy for him is where he doesn't have to please anybody. And most recently, his therapist now is actually an equine therapist.
Oh, wow.
So he's working with horses and loving it. And Nicky, my youngest, he's now 6, and we just recently started with him. He is with an art therapist and movement therapist. And it's just very much geared toward his age and his personality. And he's learning a lot about those feelings that come up, and we're working on naming them and just letting him identify what he's feeling in his body. But I think getting help, and my husband and I also see an amazing couples therapist, and she's helped us work through things. I think getting help is never something to be ashamed of. And like you said, whether it be from a life coach or your parents, or when we first lost Christian, we had so much help. And I remember people saying, it's so good that you reach out for help, but there was no other way I could do it. And so I think it's important and nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, the unfortunate part of it is that there are people out there who try to go it alone and don't seek help. And of course, we live in a society that does not encourage it and does not facilitate it through making available through insurance and other things. And that is a really, really sad part of it. But, in reading your website, there was several more things in there that really, really resonated with me. One of them is journaling. Talked about journaling. And because I believe journaling is really, really important. Anytime you write anything down and you get your thoughts down, not only does it give you the ability to remember them, but it gives you the ability to reflect on them and digest them in a whole different perspective. So did you journal a lot during the process?
Yes, I definitely journaled a lot. And you know what you said, it gives you, it helps you reflect on the process. It helps me to see a lot when I've grown and how things have changed and where I was a year ago. But journaling is such a great thing because no one's judging you. You can get your feelings out there. You know, as a mom, sometimes I think, oh, I got so angry with Anthony today, and all these other moms must be looking at me like, how could she get mad at that when she lost a child? And some of that judgment is obviously in my own head. I struggle with my own inner voices that like to yell at me. But when you journal, it's freedom. And I personally, I love like just the feel of a pen or pencil on the page. Even that to me is a relaxing and freeing sound and feeling of letting go.
One of my other questions was that you wrote about was about gratitude.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I believe that there's two really important emotions. I mean, all of our emotions are important. And of course, I research and work with expectations because I believe that it's the seed that God planted in every man for us to grow and to deal with daily life. And once you learn to expect, you can rid yourself of depression and anxiety and a lot of things because it gives you focus. Sure. But being grateful is a healing tool, and it's for you. It is not for the people around you. It is for you. And can you expound on it, how it worked for you?
Yeah. In the very beginning, my therapist said to me, she suggested, you know, find one thing that makes you smile each day. And after losing my 6-year-old son, find one thing. I was horrified. What do you mean? You know, find one thing that makes me smile. Nothing makes me smile. And for some days, nothing did make me smile. But that simple practice of one thing a day that was a positive thing, I think that's what started me on my healing. It started me on my healing process. It started me on my hope, just to have hope again. My kids were really a motivator. Again, they were 1 and 3. So even if I wanted to stay in bed all day, there was no opportunity to do that. They got me up and moving, but there was so much joy in their living and their being. And although it was bittersweet, and some days still is bittersweet for me to see them doing things Christian never got to do, I couldn't help but just find that, thank God, you know, I'm so grateful that it wasn't that not all 3 of them or 2 of them even. Anthony was in the garage, had that pole struck him as well. Thank God. I mean, it could always be worse. It could always be better. It could always be worse. And I think reminding yourself of that is really an important thing. And now each night as I tend to lie in bed with at least one of my children at night. You know, I go through the day in my head and I just recount everything that happened. And sometimes it's like, thank you, God, for hearing Nikki laugh today. That laugh really lightened my soul and it really touched me. And those are the important things, really, when we look at it, those little things.
Exactly. I mean, it's what brings you the joy and the hope. You talked about hope. And hope lies in our expectations, because when we have positive expectations, that's why when you have negative expectations, it's just like positive and negative eons, you know, that go back and forth, you know, positives attract and negatives repulse. And it's just part of the whole human way that we work. And hope is just such a major part of really having a positive attitude. And you know, then there's the other part of it, faith, you know, having faith that what we don't know, you know, you talk about being grateful. Part of gratefulness is being hopeful and thankful for it all. So that's really good. Got to ask you this one.
Yeah.
How did you manage your expectations through all of it?
It's a daily thing, I want to say. Expectations in the beginning, it looks like, how am I ever going to get through this? In my head, I think I recently wrote a blog on this. I would hear the words, I just want to die. I just want to die. But it wasn't coming from a suicidal place. It was coming from a place of, I don't think I can stand this pain. And so I did anything and everything. And I recently did a talk on creativity, helping you move through grief. And one of the things I said at the end to this group of people who were grieving, and they were grieving all different, losses, is don't be afraid to try anything. Try anything that you think might give you some hope and some peace. And if it's for 15 minutes, well, guess what? For 15 minutes out of your day, you have a little bit of a brighter spot in your world. I mean, when you lose anyone who you love so dearly, initial period right afterwards is just so painful and so dark. And I think in the beginning, I thought, oh, I'm never going to get through this. I'll never. My expectation, going back to what you said, expectations was that when a parent loses their child, well, they don't get through it. They just wrap on up and that's it. And you don't see, they pretty much fall off the face of the earth. Well, I couldn't do that. And obviously that doesn't happen because we know lots of people who live through it. And so little by little, each time I could feel a little bit more positivity, and maybe not even positivity. In the beginning, it was just when I could feel a relief of pain for the shortest amount of time, I realized, okay, the more I can do this, the more I can keep going with this, anything positive, I will get through this. And I will get through this because his life can't be lost in vain. Mm-hmm. If I give up on my own life, his life was lost in vain. I will carry on and I will carry through and I will mother these two children, living children, the best I know how. I will mother my angel the best I know how by honoring him and keeping his spirit alive. And I will, hold my family together and keep my marriage strong with my husband because I love him and I love my family. And they're one of the things I'm most grateful for. And one of the things that gives her, that I am most grateful for and gives me the most hope.
Don't know which direction you want your life to take? Are you sinking deep down into the pit of uncertainties day by day? So, what's the secret to leading a happy, satisfied life? It's taking matters into your own hands. But what if the matters in question are a total blur? Art Costello's Expectation Academy course aims to tell you exactly how you can get some clarity in your life. This course can be your savior on your journey to reinventing yourself. While you certainly can't plan your whole future ahead, you can definitely control twists and turns your life takes. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for this course now at expectationacademy.com. Get a chance to broaden your horizons and add meaning to your life. That's expectationacademy.com.
What you said is so powerful, and I hope everybody heard it, because if you have a child who, I always worry about the suicides that are going on with our youth right now. And what has happened with them is that they've lost hope. Mm-hmm. They've lost hope that their life is ever going to be worth anything. And this is what I can tell you from my experience in Vietnam, and where hopelessness sometimes seemed like it was the current running through everything that we were doing.
Yeah.
There is always hope. We never know what the joys that God has waiting for us around the corner. On August 28th, you lost the greatest gift that he gave you, but he also replaced it with a new meaning and a new beginning to help others and create. And you never lost hope, and you never lost faith. And you've had this expectation that everything is going to work out. And see, that's what I learned in Vietnam, was that no matter what happened, everything always worked out. It's almost like giving up control, but yet still retaining it. And I know people are not going to understand it, but you almost have to surrender. You have to surrender. You have to surrender to the pain and the hurt.
Yes.
And then you rise up from the ashes and you start being positive and creative and become a doer. That's the beauty in it. If there's something to be gained from it, that is it. So
that's it. You can't go around it. You have to surrender to it. You have to live in it. And you have to realize that things working out doesn't mean it's going to be the way you thought it was going to be.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah. You have to realize, but aside from that, there will always be hope, and there will always be something that you can find to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. But you have to work at it.
Yep. And it doesn't just pertain to tragic situations. I deal with people who, for lack of a better term, are very affluent and wealthy and extremely unhappy. Mm-hmm. And you can have the same feelings that we're talking about out of joyful experiences, and you have to learn how to manage the good with the bad. And it becomes a process of learning how to manage all the expectations and all the journeys that we're put on here on earth to have, because every one of us is destined for a different journey. None of them are the same. If they were, we would be a bunch of robots. I mean, that's exactly what we'd be. And that's another lesson out of all of it. So,
absolutely. We all have our own journey, and sometimes you have to discover it. Sometimes it's maybe a simpler way to discover it rather than the things that we've gone through and having, unfortunately, to see the deaths in Vietnam or losing my son. But we all have a different journey. And that's the other thing also about grief. You can't walk anyone's journey for them. So when I worry about my children and what's happening with them, and I get anxious about what they're going through, or even my husband or my mom or, my mother-in-law, I can't walk it for them. I can be there and walk next to them and help them as best I can, but I can only walk my own journey.
Yeah. And it's providing support and tools to others that really, they have to face it on their own, and they have to work through the challenges that it presents because they are different. It's totally different.
Yes.
Well, we're nearing the end of our hour, and I'm going to hate to say goodbye, but I do want to give you some time to leave us with any wisdom, and also tell us where all your websites and all your social media, how people can get a hold of you, and what you're doing next. So you got the next, how many ever minutes it takes. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. So right now, our non-for-profit, which is called Love from Heaven Christian Martinisi Memorial Fund. It's a mouthful, but we recently were approved in a formal nonprofit status back in January, which I'm very excited about. It's something I've known I wanted to do since the day we lost him. So it's in memory. It's a nonprofit fund formed in memory of him. And basically, like I was speaking about with the support and the resources and everything we had when we lost Christian, I found the real value in it. And what the nonprofit aims to do is to carry that on. So when a family loses a child, and we are made aware of that, and we aim to send a care package to the family just with basic resources. And here's what I've found that's worked for me. And here's, in fact, one of the things we have not sent any out yet. So this is all new, but one of the things that we will be including is a book that I used, which was called Mom's One Line a Day. And it was what helped me start with the gratitude. And each day I just wrote down one thing, and it could be a basic notebook if you needed. But so just things like that. Resources help really aim to create a community of parents so that maybe you're not comfortable going out and going to a grief group, but maybe you're comfortable online. And of course, there's many places where you can be online at this point, but just support and a direct one-on-one with myself to help people. And then that first holiday season to provide gifts for the family. That's that part of the nonprofit. And we will down the line be awarding scholarships and to memorialize Christian's love of learning. He was a curious, amazing little boy who just loved learning, loved reading, and we don't want to let that go. He had a lot of potential, as all children in some way. I know every single child has potential, and he could outwit me sometimes. Like his sense of humor and he was like a mini adult sometimes. But so there's that. So I've been working on that. I've also been working on a local grief group, which has met once, and we'll be meeting on a monthly basis. So that has again, just a resource and a place for people to go and talk. And in this grief group and the one I'm running, facilitating, each time we meet, providing them with a different tool to try. So the first one was journaling, actually. So I handed each of them a journal and I said, listen, try it. If you're comfortable with it, try it. See if it helps you. Who knows? It may help all of you. It may help none of you. It may help 3 of you. But like you said, if it helps one person or one thing I say, help somebody or gets them thinking or healing, I think that's an amazing thing. So each month we'll be working on a different tool because that's part of it. I call it like my toolbox of hope. I have all these things that I've tried throughout the years, and I think they're important for each person to have for anything, not just grief, anything. And then my blogging will, have that. I have that going on. I try to blog about once a week. And that's really just a variety of different situations that I go through. Sometimes I don't even expect. I don't know that something's going to happen and it inspires a blog post. But it's really about life and living after this trauma and this just loss. And that's over at www.christiansredballoon.com. And it's Red Balloon because we release red balloons in memory of him. So that's kind of how that got that name. And I did not mention the URL for the nonprofit is www.lovefromheaven.org. So that's that one. And at Twitter, you can find me at Light of Grief. I do some posting over there on Twitter. And I think I've covered them all. Did I cover all of your ending questions? I feel like I'm missing something.
Instagram?
I'm not.
Oh, you need to get on Instagram.
I know. I can't quite I don't know. I'm still working on it. I have a personal account on there and I'm kind of fidgeting with that to get used to it. Yeah.
No, I think you've covered everything. So, I mean, it's been an honor having you on the show. You're really, really a special person. God has gifted you with being able to intelligently talk about your grief and help others work through theirs. And good will come of everything when you put your heart and soul like you have into it. And it really is an honor. So I'm thankful that I met you. And
I am as well.
And I will always be here to help you in any way I can. If you need any help with anything, and that my audience knows this is my heart. I care about people so deeply. I want to help any way I can. So I'm here for you, just so you know that. You and your husband both, and the boys. I'm here for them. If I get to upstate New York, I'm going to come see you.
That's it. You better. No, I really thank you for this opportunity. When everything happened, I knew that it could not happen in vain. And I do believe that he's with me in all of my writing and in everything I'm doing. And this is Christian and God's message, and it's coming through me. And I'm grateful for that. It's something that I'm grateful that I've been given the opportunity to shine light on this, on a horrible situation, but hopefully adding some hope to it.
Yep.
So thank you. And I'm grateful to speak with you today. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. And folks out in Shower Epiphany land, Cara, all of you, thank you for listening in today. This is awesome. And there's just tons of information on Cara's website and on this podcast that you can learn. And I want you to take it away and just learn from it, and just keep your expectations high and just do everything that you really want to do, and don't let fear stop you. And with that being said, Heather White, please take us away.
Thanks for listening to the show. Drop us your comments and questions with what you want answered on the show. You can subscribe on iTunes and Binge Network. You can also get more information on the website, expectationtherapy.com.